January 15th, 2023, over Pokhara, Nepal, a camera phone captured a smiling passenger as the plane descended through clear skies. Seconds later, everything changed. These are crash victims who captured their final moments.
State troopers are using the charred remains of the Suzuki Forenza to try to piece together just what caused a tractor-trailer to collide with the car carrying two teens.
December 6th, 2016, it started with a simple question from a friend in the passenger seat. "Are you going live?" Brooke Miranda Hughes, just 18 years old, was already broadcasting herself on Facebook while driving slowly along Interstate 380 near Tobyhanna, Pennsylvania. It was just after midnight, and that question would be the last thing she ever heard. Brooke was behind the wheel, her friend Chania Morrison Toomey riding next to her. They were cruising in the right lane, the car moving slower than normal traffic. According to Pennsylvania State Trooper Dave Peters, they were driving on a spare tire, though later investigation would make that detail less clear due to the fiery wreck that destroyed much of the vehicle's evidence. The camera continued to roll as Brooke navigated the dimly lit highway. Chania's voice is heard asking about the live stream. Before Brooke can answer, the screen suddenly fills with the harsh glare of headlights, followed by the unmistakable sound of screeching tires. There's no time for reaction as a massive tractor trailer slams into the back of their car, cutting their lives tragically short in an instant. The video doesn't end there. For another 7 agonizing minutes, it continues to stream nothing but blackness. At the very end, a man's voice is heard, and a blurry bearded face appears on screen before the broadcast finally cuts off. Both teens died instantly in the crash. The driver of the truck walked away unhurt. The investigation would reveal that the car was either traveling unusually slowly or possibly stopped in the right lane. But the damage was so severe that some details remain unclear. The Facebook Live video was quickly removed from Brooke's page, but not before authorities secured it as evidence. Pennsylvania State Police announced they would use the footage as part of their investigation into the tragic accident. And nothing would erase the fact that Brooke and Chania's final moments were broadcast live to their friends and followers, turning a simple drive into a tragic lesson about the consequences of divided attention behind the wheel. The crash raised questions about the role of social media in modern life, especially among young people. It forced a reckoning with the reality that not every moment needs to be shared, and that sometimes putting the phone down can be a matter of life and death. Brooke Miranda Hughes and Chania Morrison Toomey's story stands as a stark warning about the dangers of distracted driving, especially when combined with the pressure to share every moment online. Their tragic end serves as a powerful reminder that some risks simply aren't worth taking, no matter how many people might be watching. And from one heartbreaking moment to another, let's look at how a night of reckless fun turned tragic, and everything was caught on camera in the final second.
We're doing 90, bro. So bad.
April 12th, 2015, the quiet Sussex countryside was shattered by a catastrophic crash that claimed 2 lives, 20-year-old Kyle Careford and his friend, 21-year-old Michael Owen. What began as a reckless joyride through Crowborough would soon become a harrowing lesson filmed in real time. The footage was recorded on Michael Owen's phone. It captured the friends laughing and joking as they sped through the night in a red Renault Clio. The camera panned across the dashboard, revealing a speedometer climbing dangerously high. The friends' reckless behavior was fueled by a cocktail of prescribed and illegal drugs. Early in the video, Michael's voice could be heard, growing increasingly anxious as their speed rose above limits. And despite his repeated warnings, the car barreled down the narrow B2100 at 3 times the legal limit. Both men were from Royal Tunbridge Wells, but were staying in Crowborough that night. Kyle, the driver, didn't even have a license or insurance. The car belonged to Michael, making the situation even more tragic. And yet neither seemed aware that their reckless decisions would soon end in disaster.
In the 90s, boy. So bad. So it's been that much
Suddenly, the laughter and bravado vanished. The camera shook violently. There was a deafening crash, then silence. The Clio had smashed into the wall of St. Michael and All Angels Church at Jarvis Brook, killing both men instantly. In the aftermath, the phone recording continued. A woman's voice was heard, asking if they could hear her and announcing that an ambulance was on the way. The later inquest revealed both men had taken a mixture of prescription and illegal drugs, severely impairing Kyle's ability to control the car. And despite both wearing seatbelts, the impact at 90 miles per hour was unsurvivable. Michael's mother, Kat Owen, made a heart-wrenching statement after the inquest. She said,
"We bring our children up, teaching them right from wrong. We guide them and give them our advice and hope they listen. But once they are adults, we hope they make the right choices. I really don't know why the boys chose to do what they did, but I blame them both for the decisions they made on this night."
She continued, hoping the release of this video would stop one person from making the same mistake and make them see that a bit of fun can have such devastating consequences. She asked other people to take a lesson from the tragic accident, saying,
"Young people should take notice and realize that you are not invincible and take seriously how precious your lives are to yourselves and others."
Michael's ex-girlfriend, Lauren Humble, the mother of his daughter Lily Rose, called the video heartbreaking to watch. She said,
"The Michael we saw in that video was not the Michael that we knew, who was a loving, caring, responsible daddy. The legacy that Michael has left is our beautiful daughter. She will have to live with the impact of this horrific situation forever."
The decision to release this harrowing footage wasn't easy for either family, but their hope was clear, that by sharing these final moments, they might prevent another family from experiencing similar tragedy. Chief Inspector Phil Nicholas of the Surrey and Sussex Road Policing Unit commented on the decision, saying,
"Any lives saved due to the video's release would be a valuable legacy of Michael and Kyle's sad deaths."
And from the rush of a reckless joyride to a group of friends behind the wheel, thinking inhaling laughing gas would make the night more fun, until it all ended in tragedy.
Moments before their deaths, Thomas Johnson's passengers laugh. And then this.
June 20th, 2023. It was just after midnight in the quiet village of Marcham, Oxfordshire, in England, when BMW 3 Series carrying 4 teenagers became a symbol of reckless tragedy. The driver, 19-year-old Thomas Johnson, gripped the wheel with one hand while holding a balloon filled with laughing gas in the other. His friends, Ethan Goddard, Daniel Hancock, and Elliot Pullen, were laughing, passing canisters, and capturing their dangerous joyride on mobile phones. They had no idea these would be their final moments. Johnson had only held his driver's license for a few months, but that night, he was behind the wheel of a powerful car, one that he would soon push beyond 100 miles per hour. The evidence revealed that Johnson wasn't just speeding. He had also deliberately disabled the vehicle's electronic stability control, effectively removing its last line of electronic protection. Instead, he just relied on his own overconfidence, fueled by youth and impaired by nitrous oxide. The BMW didn't just break the speed limit, it destroyed it. As Johnson entered a 30-mile-per-hour zone, he pushed the car to an unbelievable 97, turning it into a missile on wheels. Two sisters driving nearby heard the screech of tires as the BMW flew past them. Seconds later, they came upon the aftermath, the twisted wreckage that showed exactly what happens when overconfidence collides with reality. The phone evidence was 3 videos in total, shot in the minutes before the crash. The videos documented the boys inhaling laughing gas and showing off for the camera, Less than a minute before the crash, the final video showed the BMW shooting off from a red light. The engine roared, and everyone inside seemed carefree, completely unaware they were filming their final moments. As Johnson approached a bend on the A415, his grip on reality and on the wheel failed. The BMW skidded out of control, slammed into a lamppost, then smashed into a large tree. The impact was catastrophic. All three passengers, Ethan, Daniel, and Elliot, were killed instantly. Johnson himself suffered life-threatening injuries, brain trauma, a collapsed lung, cracked ribs, and permanent loss of sight in one eye. He would survive, but his life would never be the same. At the crash scene, police found 2 nitrous oxide canisters inside the car and 8 more in the boot. Ethan was the only one wearing a seatbelt, a decision that would add another tragic layer to the story. The family's grief was overwhelming and raw. Elliot's parents, Kate and Giles, spoke of being sucked into a world of pain they could not process. They couldn't even see their son's body. His injuries were so severe. The physical longing to hold him one last time would haunt them forever. Ethan's parents described him as a fun, loving, and generous young man, always thinking of others, always making his family proud. Daniel's family remembered him as caring and selfless, a young man who died just 3 miles from home in a completely avoidable crash.
It's not an accident. Now that we've seen the footage, seen the videos, seen the evidence, it was an accident waiting to happen. It was just completely reckless, dangerous behavior.
When asked about nitrous oxide, Johnson said in the police interview, "It made my head feel dizzy." But he claimed no memory of inhaling it that night, despite the damning video evidence. He insisted he didn't drive fast and wouldn't use nitrous oxide. Of course, data from mobile phones and vehicle systems painted a complete different picture of the fatal night. Johnson had been filmed with a balloon in his mouth, clearly inhaling nitrous oxide. The car's dynamic stability control and traction control systems had been disabled, and the speed readings were undeniable. Detective Sergeant Tony Jenkins, lead investigator, spoke for every parent with teenage children, saying,
"You just hope that they don't put themselves into positions of vulnerability. You hope they don't drive excessively. You hope they don't use any drugs. It really is a tragic case."
Eventually, Johnson pleaded guilty to 3 counts of causing death by dangerous driving. Judge Emma Knott delivered a sentence as harsh as Johnson's actions deserved: 9 years and 4 months in prison, plus an 11-year driving ban. But no prison term could balance the scales of justice for 3 lost lives. Judge Knott addressed Johnson directly, telling him,
"Your 3 passengers will never see beyond their teenage years, and you move out of yours significantly and permanently disabled."
Johnson's story ends in prison, but the legacy of his choices lives on in 3 empty bedrooms, in 3 families forever changed, and in every parent's nightmare of receiving that late-night call. The next story is different. It shows how even the simplest, happiest moments can take a devastating turn in an instant.
This is the actual flight that ended as the deadliest balloon tragedy.
July 30th, 2016, Paige Brabson and her mother, Laura Lee, boarded a hot air balloon in Maxwell, Texas, not knowing these would be their final moments. The peaceful sunrise flight was a Mother's Day gift from Paige to her mom, a bucket list dream finally coming true after many weather delays. The day began with excitement, but would end in tragedy that no one could have predicted. In an interview, Laura Lee's brother, Jason Pino, said he would never forget that morning. He recalled,
"At 6:30, we started seeing posts from my sister. She was big into posting things on Facebook, and she posted she was going on her bucket list balloon ride."
The mother and daughter shared live updates and photos as they began floating above Texas, their joy evident in every post. But around 7:35 a.m., those updates stopped suddenly. The balloon, operated by Heart of Texas Balloon Rides, carried 16 people that morning, 15 passengers, and the pilot. Moments later, witnesses saw it hit power lines, followed by a massive fireball that lit up the sky for miles. Everyone aboard was killed instantly, it remains the deadliest hot air balloon disaster in U.S. history. The National Transportation Safety Board launched a major investigation, and what they found was devastating. In October 2017, they concluded that the crash was caused by the pilot's pattern of poor decision-making. He chose to fly that morning even though other balloon operators had canceled due to low clouds and fog. He then continued the flight into the fog and descended too close to the clouds, conditions that made it nearly impossible to see or avoid the power lines below. Toxicology reports also revealed the pilot had diazepam, oxycodone, and diphenhydramine in his system, enough to cause impairment similar to that of a drunk driver. He also had a long history of DWIs and even served time for them. Yet, because balloon pilots weren't required to hold a medical flight certificate, he was still legally allowed to fly. The crash site near Maxwell, Texas became a somber reminder of the tragedy. 14 personal devices, phones, cameras, tablets, were recovered, containing the victim's last moments. The balloon's envelope landed 3/4 of a mile from the burned basket, showing the force of the disaster. Among them were photos that revealed the final moments of Paige and her mother. Family and friends found some comfort in those photos as Paige and Laura Lee smiled, enjoying their adventure. As Paige's uncle Jason said,
"One of the last posts she posted, they looked really happy. It said, 'It's peaceful up here.'"
and I think she was at peace up there. But the Texas balloon crash wasn't the only time final moments were caught in the sky. The next case shows us just how far errors can go. December 25th, 2024, the cabin of Azerbaijan Airlines Flight 8243 was in utter chaos. Passengers scrambled for oxygen masks as the plane took a sharp descent. A passenger caught the terrifying moment on video while praying and saying,
"Allahu Akbar."
"God is great," in what would have become a haunting final moment. Just a few hours earlier, 67 people boarded this Embraer 190 jet in Baku, Azerbaijan. Their destination was Grozny, Chechnya. It was just a routine flight across the Caspian Sea, but this would be no ordinary journey. Approximately 40 minutes after takeoff, as the plane neared Grozny, the crew reported losing all GPS navigation. That's when everything started to spiral out of control. Thick fog covered the airport, forcing the pilots to abort their landing attempts twice. Then, passengers heard an explosion before shrapnel tore through the cabin, injuring several people on board. The pilots, desperate to save their passengers, radioed for help. They claimed a bird strike in the cockpit. But that was just the beginning of their troubles. The hydraulic systems failed, making the plane nearly impossible to control. And with every second, the situation grew more dire. But that was not the whole story. The evidence would later reveal a far more sinister cause than a simple bird strike. The aircraft's fuselage was riddled with holes, not from birds, but from high-velocity shrapnel. Investigators found fragments of a Russian Pantsir S-1 missile lodged in the wreckage. But before that, the plane struggled to stay airborne for a while, and the crew issued a distress signal. What's even more shocking is that they were denied an emergency landing at Russian airports and were forced instead to attempt a desperate landing in Kazakhstan. The plane circled near Aktau International Airport, making multiple failed approaches. The pilots, running out of time and options, prepared for a crash landing. At 10:30 a.m. local time, the plane hit the ground just 3 kilometers from safety. The right wing struck first, sending the jet tumbling and breaking into 2 major pieces. Fire consumed the front section, while the tail came to rest upside down, largely intact, but a grim tomb for those trapped inside. Out of the 67 people on board, 38 died in the crash. Among the dead were both pilots and a flight attendant. Heroes who fought until the very end to save lives. 29 passengers survived, many with critical injuries. Most of those who lived were seated in the rear section of the plane. The aftermath was immediate and overwhelming. Kazakh emergency workers battled flames at the crash site. Medical teams from Astana rushed to treat the wounded. blood donation centers in Aktau and Astana are filled with volunteers eager to help strangers in need. December 28th, Russian President Vladimir Putin apologized to Azerbaijan's President Ilham Aliyev for what he called a tragic incident involving the passenger aircraft in Russian airspace. At the time, he claimed that Ukrainian drones had been targeting Grozny and that Russian air defenses had been responding, but he stopped short of admitting responsibility for the crash. Nearly a year later, in October 2025, Putin publicly acknowledged for the first time that Russian air defenses had, in fact, shot down the Azerbaijani plane. He described the event as a tragic accident. Despite the admission, nothing would erase the fact that the crash of Flight 8243 wasn't just a tragic accident, it was a devastating consequence of modern warfare's reach into civilian life. But if you think this was the most tragic footage captured before disaster struck, wait until you see what happened in the next case.
To India now, and authorities say they've now recovered 270 bodies from the site of the plane crash in Ahmedabad city on Thursday.
June 12, 2025, it all began as a regular routine trip, but within 34 seconds, Air India Flight 171 would become one of the deadliest aviation disasters in modern history. This is the story of its passengers' final moments, captured not only in haunting photographs, but also in the digital echo of their social media posts, and the devastating aftermath that followed. The Joshi family boarded the Boeing 7878 Dreamliner in Ahmedabad, India, bound for London Gatwick. Dr. Pratik Joshi, a respected radiologist, had recently moved to the UK for work. His wife, Dr. Komi Vyas, had just resigned from her position at Pacific Hospital in Udaipur, Rajasthan, preparing to begin a new chapter alongside their 3 children, twin boys Nakul and Pradyut, and their daughter, Miraya. Moments before takeoff, Dr. Joshi snapped a selfie. In the photo, he and Dr. Vyas smile from one side of the aisle, while their children, seated opposite, look toward the camera, Nakul and Pradyut offering shy smiles, while Miraya beams brightly. It was an image filled with hope and anticipation for a new life in London. This would be their final photograph together. Across the aisle, Jamie and Fiongal Greenlaw Meek, owners of the Wellness Foundry in Ramsgate, Kent, prepared to return home after what they called a magical experience in India. Jamie posted a final Instagram story minutes before boarding.
We are at the airport, just boarding. Goodbye, India.
Goodbye.
Thank you.
10-hour flight back to England.
In another part of the cabin, the Nanabawa family, Akil, his wife Hannah, and their daughter Sarah sat together. They'd recently spent time with relatives in India and were returning to their home in Gloucester. At 1:37 p.m. local time, Flight 171 began its takeoff roll on runway 23 at Sardar Vallabhbhai, Patel International Airport. On board were 230 passengers and 12 crew members. After a 62-second takeoff roll, the plane lifted off. 3 seconds later, as it reached its maximum recorded airspeed of 180 knots, both fuel control switches, located beneath the throttles, sequentially moved from run to cut off 1 second apart. Both engines immediately shut down, causing a complete loss of thrust. In the cockpit, First Officer Clive Kunder was the pilot flying, while Captain Sumit Sabharwal was monitoring. The cockpit voice recorder would later reveal a brief, panicked exchange. One pilot asked the other why he had cut off, with the other replying that he did not. Some reports have suggested the possibility of pilot Daud's suicide, citing the deliberate cutoff of fuel switches and unclear cockpit audio. But without solid evidence, those claims remain speculation, and the pilots' families and unions have strongly denied them. The investigation is still ongoing. As the aircraft began losing altitude, airport CCTV cameras captured its final moments. The tail sagged beneath the nose as it descended, eventually striking the top of the campus mess at BJ Medical College, just 1.7 kilometers from the runway. The impact destroyed multiple buildings, including student accommodations and the resident doctor's hostel. On board, the sole survivor was a British national, Vishwash Kumar Ramesh, seated in 11A next to an emergency exit. He found himself in a section of the fuselage that detached and landed on the ground floor of the hostel. He escaped through an opening created by the broken emergency exit, sustaining only minor injuries. The crash claimed the lives of all 229 other passengers and 12 crew members. On the ground, 19 people were killed and 67 seriously injured, including medical students who had been eating lunch in the hostel dining hall when the plane hit. In the aftermath, over 300 firefighters, 60 fire vehicles, and 20 water tankers responded to the scene. Rescue teams from the Indian Army, Border Security Force, Central Reserve Police Force, and National Disaster Response Force joined local authorities in massive relief efforts. Identification of the victims proved difficult due to the intense post-crash fires, which reached temperatures of 1,500 degrees Celsius. DNA analysis ultimately identified all 260 victims, on board and on the ground, by June the 28th. Among the many stories of loss, the Joshi family's final photograph became a symbol of hope turned to heartbreak. Dr. Joshi's colleague Rajiv Singh recalled, "He touched the lives of so many people, both through his clinical work and as a colleague and friend to many. It is hard to accept that a man with such a passion for life and his beautiful young family have been taken in this way." The Greenlaw Meek's final social media posts went viral after the crash. Their friends and colleagues organized a minute of silence at Ramsgate Pride, where they were scheduled to host workshops. Former principal Elizabeth McConnell remembered Jamie saying,
"He lit up the room with his smile, and I'm sure will be remembered and missed by so many."
In the aftermath, Flight 171's number was retired, and Air India suspended 83 wide-body flights for 6 weeks to perform government-mandated safety checks on its Boeing 787 fleet. The airline gradually restored routes by mid-July, with full recovery in October. Today, the legacy of Air India Flight 171 serves as a stark reminder of how quickly life can change. Its passengers' final moments, captured in photos, videos, and social media posts, continue to resonate as a testament to lives and dreams cut tragically short. The next story takes us to South Africa, where what began as a luxury air safari turned into a nightmare.
It's getting worse, huh? You better hit it for the runway. Huh? You better hit it for the runway quicker than he's trying to. Because it's getting bad. It's getting worse? This is getting...
July 10th, 2018. 16 people boarded a historic Convair 340 for a short scenic flight out of Wonderboom Airport in Pretoria, South Africa. The plane had just undergone restoration and was bound for a Dutch aviation museum, but this test flight was about to turn into a nightmare, all captured by a passenger's camera. Moments after takeoff, passengers noticed something was terribly wrong. The left engine began trailing thick brown smoke, and soon flames were visible from its cowling. A passenger recorded it from his window seat, his voice tense as he realized they were in serious trouble. The Convair's cabin filled with the acrid smell of burning oil. But instead of following emergency protocols, the experienced pilots hesitated. The engine fire checklist sat untouched as the flames spread. Incredibly, no one attempted to activate the engine's fire suppression system, a critical failure that sealed the aircraft's fate. The situation continued to deteriorate. The burning engine began to fail, but the pilots didn't feather the propeller or cut fuel to the fire. Instead, they attempted to limp back to the airport, now losing altitude fast. Passengers, sensing the growing danger, began to panic as the ground got closer in the window. And more still, despite clear evidence of which engine was burning, the crew debated which one had failed. And just like that, precious seconds slipped away as the fire ate through critical control cables. Soon, the aircraft's ailerons failed, leaving the pilots with little control over the descending plane. Then suddenly, the left wing dropped. The Convair clipped power lines and slammed into a factory building, shedding its left wing and right engine in the impact. The camera plunged into darkness as the aircraft broke apart, ending the peaceful flight in a chaotic jumble of metal and fire. The aftermath was pure chaos. Screams filled the air as dust and debris settled. Miraculously, 17 people survived the crash, thanks in part to the building absorbing much of the impact energy. But the flight engineer died on impact, and 4 on the ground suffered serious injuries. The pilot in command succumbed to his injuries 18 months later. What's truly shocking is how preventable this disaster was. The pilots, both highly experienced in modern airliners, failed to follow basic multi-engine emergency procedures. They never tried to extinguish the fire or feather the propeller, critical actions that could have saved the aircraft and everyone aboard. The official investigation found multiple failures, from maintenance errors that led to the initial fire, to the flight crew's shocking inaction, to the illegal operation of the aircraft by pilots not properly certified for this vintage plane. Layer upon layer of negligence stacked up until tragedy became inevitable. But the most haunting evidence remains that passengers' camera footage, capturing not just the technical failure, but the very human cost of complacency and error. It's a sobering reminder that in aviation, every checklist and procedure is written in blood. And from the Pretoria crash to another heartbreaking tragedy, where a passenger's camera kept rolling, right up until the very end. January 15th, 2023, the inside of a Yeti Airlines Flight 691 from Kathmandu to Pokhara, Nepal, seemed perfectly normal. 25-year-old Sonu Jaiswal, a father of 3 from Ghazipur, India, sat with 3 friends. Their trip to Nepal began as a simple pilgrimage to the Pashupatinath Temple, a grand shrine on the outskirts of Kathmandu, which is dedicated to the Hindu god Shiva. The trip was reportedly Jaiswal's idea, who wanted to pray at the temple for another son. After visiting the temple, the friends wanted to go on another adventure in Pokhara, a picturesque tourist town nestled near the Annapurna mountain range. They planned to paraglide and then return to Kathmandu, but fate had other plans. During the landing, Sonu started a Facebook live stream. The camera captured the landscape below, brown-green fields and honeycombs of buildings as the plane approached Pokhara. In this final video, Sonu showed himself smiling, then turned the camera to his laughing friends, then back out the window, completely unaware of what was coming. There was no sign of trouble, no warning from the pilots, just the normal sounds of a landing aircraft. However, suddenly the camera shook as the plane banked steeply left. The calm instantly evaporated, and panic spread through the cabin. Passengers' faces twisted in terror as the reality of the situation became clear. The final moments were pure chaos. The camera shook violently as the plane lost altitude. Flames and thick smoke filled the screen. The engine screeched, glass broke, and desperate screams created a nightmarish soundscape before the video abruptly ended in darkness. Outside,
rescuers would later find the phone with this devastating footage among the wreckage.
Sonu's friends and family confirmed its authenticity, proving this was his final act, broadcasting the last moments of 72 lives. The crash investigation revealed a tragic sequence of human errors. The pilots, distracted by an instructional session, accidentally feathered both propellers mid-flight, cutting all engine power. As they performed checklists and tried to correct the flap settings, they failed to notice that the propeller levers were in the feathered position. By the time they realized there was no power coming from the engines, it was too late. Both engines were powerless, and the plane stalled fatally. This wasn't just Nepal's deadliest plane crash in 30 years. It was the nation's worst domestic aviation disaster ever. The ATR 72-500 plummeted into a gorge just seconds before a safe landing, killing everyone on board. The aftermath rocked both Nepal and India. Families in Ghazipur, India, demanded compensation and closure. Sonu Jaiswal's father, unable to bring himself to watch his son's final video, said their lives have come crashing down. The entire community mourned 4 friends who left together and never returned. In Nepal, a national day of mourning was declared. The crash investigation led to sweeping changes in flight safety protocols, training procedures, and approach paths. But no technical fix can erase the haunting final moments captured in Sonu's live stream. The calm before disaster, the sudden terror, and the irrevocable loss. For Sonu Jaiswal and everyone on Yeti Airlines Flight 691, that ordinary flight turned into a viral tragedy, a stark reminder of how quickly life can change, and how sometimes the most normal moments become the most unforgettable.